In the tumult of ancient Israel, amidst the clash of swords and the fervent prayers of a nation in peril, arose Jephthah, a warrior whose valor was matched only by the weight of his tragic vow. His name echoed through the annals of history, a beacon of courage and sacrifice in the face of relentless adversity. Jephthah's story begins in the book of Judges, chapters 11 and 12. He is introduced as Jephthah the Gileadite, described as a mighty warrior. His father's name was Gilead, and his mother was a prostitute. This mixed parentage set the stage for the challenges Jephthah would face throughout his life. Jephthah was born in Gilead, a region east of the Jordan River, inhabited by the Israelite tribes of Gad and Manasseh. Despite his father's established position in the community, Jephthah's status was compromised due to his mother's profession. Gilead had other sons by his legitimate wife, and when they grew up, they drove Jephthah away, saying, "You shall not inherit in our father's house, for you are the son of another woman." The society of Gilead during Jephthah's time was patriarchal and tribal. Family lineage and legitimate birthrights were of utmost importance. Illegitimacy, particularly being the son of a prostitute, carried significant stigma. This stigma influenced Jephthah's relationships with his half-brothers and the broader community, ultimately leading to his expulsion from his father's household. Jephthah's expulsion was not merely a family affair, but also a societal rejection. Being driven away from his father's house meant losing his inheritance and any social standing he might have had. This harsh treatment by his brothers and society pushed Jephthah to leave Gilead and seek refuge elsewhere. After being expelled, Jephthah fled to the land of Tob, a region likely northeast of Gilead, beyond the borders of Israel. Tob was outside the established societal norms of Israel, providing a sanctuary for those who were outcasts or fugitives. In Tob, Jephthah became the leader of a group of adventurers, described in the Bible as worthless men. These men gathered around him, and together they formed a band of outlaws. While the term worthless men implies a lack of social standing or moral integrity, it also suggests that these individuals were skilled fighters, making Jephthah a formidable leader in a rough and lawless environment. During this period, Jephthah honed his skills as a warrior and a leader. His band of outlaws likely engaged in various activities typical of mercenaries or raiders, including defending local villages or attacking caravans and settlements. This life on the fringes of society equipped Jephthah with the experience and reputation that would later play a crucial role in his rise to leadership in Gilead. The Ammonites, a neighboring tribe, made war against Israel, creating a crisis that the leaders of Gilead could not handle on their own. The elders of Gilead, recognizing their need for a capable military leader, turned to Jephthah. Despite his status as an outcast, Jephthah's reputation as a mighty warrior made him the ideal candidate to lead them against the Ammonites. The elders of Gilead went to Tob to persuade Jephthah to return and lead their fight. Initially, Jephthah questioned their motives, reminding them of how they had hated and expelled him. He asked, "Did you not hate me and drive me out of my father's house? Why have you come to me now when you are in distress?" The elders acknowledged their previous mistreatment of Jephthah, but appealed to his sense of duty and offered him leadership over all the inhabitants of Gilead if he would return and fight for them. They said, "That is why we have turned to you now, that you may go with us and fight against the Ammonites and be our head over all the inhabitants of Gilead." Jephthah accepted their offer, but secured their promise by making them swear an oath before the Lord at Mizpah. He wanted to ensure that their commitment was genuine and binding. The elders agreed, and Jephthah was appointed as the leader and commander of Gilead, marking the beginning of his journey from outcast to ruler. The period of the judges in Israel was marked by cycles of apostasy, oppression, cries for deliverance, and the rise of deliverers chosen by God. During Jephthah's time, the Israelites again did evil in the eyes of the Lord, serving the Baals and Ashtoreths and forsaking the Lord. As a result, the Lord allowed the Ammonites and Philistines to oppress Israel. The Ammonites, a neighboring people east of the Jordan River, began to make war against Israel. They crossed the Jordan to fight against Judah, Benjamin, and the house of Ephraim, causing great distress among the Israelites. The Israelites, realizing their predicament, cried out to the Lord for help, confessing their sins and seeking deliverance. In their distress, the Israelites in Gilead sought a leader to deliver them from the Ammonite threat. The elders of Gilead, remembering Jephthah's reputation as a mighty warrior, decided to seek his help. Despite having previously driven him away due to his illegitimate birth, they recognized that Jephthah was their best hope for military leadership. The elders of Gilead went to the land of Tob to recruit Jephthah. They said to him, "Come and be our leader, that we may fight against the Ammonites." Jephthah, aware of their past treatment, questioned their motives. "Did you not hate me and drive me out of my father's house? Why have you come to me now when you are in distress?" The elders responded to Jephthah's challenge by acknowledging their need for him. They said, "That is why we have turned to you now, that you may go with us and fight against the Ammonites and be our head over all the inhabitants of Gilead." They offered him not just military leadership, but overall governance of Gilead. Jephthah sought to secure their promise with a binding agreement. He said to the elders, "If you bring me home again to fight against the Ammonites, and the Lord gives them over to me, I will be your head." The elders agreed to Jephthah's terms and swore an oath before the Lord at Mizpah, thus formalizing their agreement. Jephthah's return to Gilead marked a significant shift in his status. From being an outcast and leader of outlaws, he was now the chosen leader of his people, tasked with delivering them from their enemies. His leadership was recognized and legitimized through the oath made before the Lord, binding the elders of Gilead to their promise. Before resorting to battle, Jephthah attempted to resolve the conflict with the Ammonites through diplomacy. He sent messengers to the king of the Ammonites with a question, "What do you have against me, that you have come to me to fight against my land?" The king of the Ammonites replied that Israel had taken away his land when they came up from Egypt, from the Arnon to the Jabbok and to the Jordan, and demanded its return peaceably. Jephthah responded with a detailed account of Israel's journey and the lands they had taken. He explained that Israel had not taken the land of Moab or the land of the Ammonites, but had taken territory from the Amorites, who had previously seized it from Moab. Jephthah argued that the Lord, the God of Israel, had given Israel the land and questioned the king's right to it, comparing Israel's right to what Chemosh, the god of the Ammonites, had given them. Jephthah further reminded the king of Ammon that Israel had lived in these cities for 300 years, and during that time neither the Ammonites nor the Moabites had attempted to reclaim the land. He concluded his message by stating that he had not sinned against the Ammonites, but they were doing wrong by waging war against Israel. He called upon the Lord, the judge, to decide the dispute that day between Israel and Ammon. The king of the Ammonites, however, did not heed Jephthah's message. This rejection of diplomatic resolution set the stage for the impending battle. Having been appointed as the leader of Gilead, Jephthah's first course of action was to attempt a peaceful resolution with the Ammonites. Jephthah understood the cost of war and sought to avoid unnecessary bloodshed. He sent messengers to the king of the Ammonites with a direct and probing question, "What do you have against me, that you have come to fight against my land?" This question was intended to clarify the Ammonites' grievances and to open a channel for dialogue. The king of the Ammonites responded to Jephthah's inquiry by laying claim to the territory Israel occupied. He asserted that when Israel came out of Egypt, they took away his land from the Arnon to the Jabbok and to the Jordan. He demanded that Jephthah restore these lands peaceably. The territories mentioned by the king were significant regions east of the Jordan River, which included lands historically contested by various tribes. The Arnon River marked the southern boundary, the Jabbok River the northern boundary, and the Jordan River the western boundary of the disputed area. Jephthah responded to the Ammonite king with a detailed message that combined historical recounting and theological reasoning. He aimed to refute the Ammonite claim by providing context for Israel's possession of the land. Despite Jephthah's well-constructed argument and his appeal to historical and theological justifications, the king of the Ammonites did not listen to his words. The refusal of the Ammonite king to heed Jephthah's diplomatic efforts left no option but to prepare for battle. With diplomacy having failed, Jephthah prepared for the impending conflict with the Ammonites. The Spirit of the Lord came upon Jephthah, empowering him for the task ahead. This divine empowerment was significant, indicating that Jephthah's mission was sanctioned by God and that he would have divine assistance in the battle. Jephthah mobilized the men of Gilead, and they assembled for battle. He passed through Gilead and Manasseh, then through Mizpah of Gilead, a key location for mobilizing troops and offering sacrifices to God. From Mizpah, Jephthah advanced towards the territory of the Ammonites. Before engaging in battle, Jephthah made a vow to the Lord. Seeking divine favor and victory, he promised, "If you give the Ammonites into my hands, whatever comes out of the door of my house to meet me when I return in triumph from the Ammonites will be the Lord's, and I will sacrifice it as a burnt offering." This vow, while reflecting Jephthah's desire to secure divine assistance, would later have tragic consequences. It demonstrated Jephthah's deep commitment to ensuring victory and his willingness to make a significant personal sacrifice. The Lord honored Jephthah's vow, and he advanced against the Ammonites. Jephthah led his forces into battle, and the Lord gave the Ammonites into his hands. The Bible describes Jephthah's campaign as comprehensive and decisive. He devastated 20 towns from Aroer to the vicinity of Minnith, as far as Abel-Keramim. This sweeping victory subdued the Ammonites before the Israelites. The description of the battle highlights the scale of Jephthah's victory. The towns mentioned, Aroer, Minnith, and Abel-Keramim, were significant locations in the Ammonite territory, indicating a thorough conquest. Jephthah's military strategy and leadership, combined with the divine favor he sought through his vow, led to a successful campaign that eliminated the immediate threat posed by the Ammonites. After his victorious campaign, Jephthah returned to Mizpah, his home. As he approached, his daughter came out to meet him with tambourines and dancing, celebrating his triumph. She was his only child. Besides her, he had neither son nor daughter. Upon seeing her, Jephthah was devastated. He tore his clothes and cried out, "Oh no, my daughter, you have brought me down and I am devastated. I have made a vow to the Lord that I cannot break." His daughter, understanding the gravity of her father's vow, responded with remarkable submission and courage. She said, "My father, you have given your word to the Lord. Do to me just as you promised, now that the Lord has avenged you of your enemies, the Ammonites." She then requested a 2-month reprieve to wander in the hills and bewail her virginity with her friends. Jephthah granted her request, and after 2 months she returned, and he fulfilled his vow. The text poignantly states that she had never known a man, underscoring the tragedy of her untimely death and the end of Jephthah's lineage. The fulfillment of Jephthah's vow had a profound impact on the community. It became a custom in Israel for young women to commemorate the daughter of Jephthah the Gileadite for 4 days each year. This tradition served as a somber reminder of the consequences of rash vows and the profound personal sacrifices made during times of crisis. Her response demonstrated her understanding of the gravity of her father's vow and her willingness to accept its consequences. She acknowledged the importance of keeping the vow, even at the cost of her own life. The text poignantly states that she had never known a man, underscoring the tragedy of her untimely death and the end of Jephthah's family line. The exact nature of the fulfillment of the vow has been the subject of much debate among scholars and interpreters. Some suggest that Jephthah's daughter was dedicated to lifelong service to the Lord, living a life of perpetual virginity. However, the more straightforward interpretation, based on the literal reading of the text, is that she was sacrificed as a burnt offering, as Jephthah had vowed. Following Jephthah's victory over the Ammonites, a new conflict arose, this time from within Israel. The men of Ephraim, one of the prominent tribes of Israel, confronted Jephthah. They were upset because they had not been called to join the battle against the Ammonites. They crossed over to Zaphon and said to Jephthah, "Why did you go to fight the Ammonites without calling us to go with you? We will burn your house down over your head." The tribe of Ephraim had a history of contentious behavior, often feeling slighted or seeking to assert their importance in Israelite affairs. Their aggressive approach and threat to burn Jephthah's house underscored the seriousness of their discontent and the potential for internal strife. Jephthah responded to the Ephraimites' accusations by recounting his own efforts and challenges. He said, "I and my people were engaged in a great struggle with the Ammonites, and although I called, you didn't save me out of their hands. When I saw that you wouldn't help, I took my life in my hands and crossed over to fight the Ammonites, and the Lord gave me the victory over them. Now why have you come up today to fight me?" Jephthah's response highlighted his frustration with the Ephraimites' lack of support during the crucial conflict with the Ammonites. He emphasized that he had called for their help, but when they did not respond, he took the initiative and risked his life to secure victory for Israel. Jephthah's words were a defense of his actions and a criticism of Ephraim's lack of support. The confrontation escalated into violence. Jephthah gathered the men of Gilead and fought against Ephraim. The Gileadites struck down the Ephraimites because they had insulted them by saying, "You Gileadites are renegades from Ephraim and Manasseh." This insult added fuel to the conflict, as it demeaned the Gileadites' lineage and honor. The Gileadites captured the fords of the Jordan River, leading to Ephraim. Whenever a survivor of Ephraim tried to cross, the Gileadites would challenge him. They asked each person, "Are you an Ephraimite?" If he replied, "No," they then asked him to say the word Shibboleth. If he said Sibboleth, because he could not pronounce it correctly, they seized him and killed him at the fords of the Jordan. 42,000 Ephraimites were killed at that time. This grim episode demonstrated the fierce tribal loyalty and the deadly consequences of internal disputes. The use of the word Shibboleth as a linguistic test to identify Ephraimites underscores the deep divisions and the intensity of the conflict. Jephthah judged Israel for 6 years after the conflict with Ephraim. His judgeship was marked by both his military success and the internal strife he faced. He led Israel through a turbulent period, characterized by both external threats and internal divisions. After his term as judge, Jephthah the Gileadite died and was buried in a town in Gilead. His death marked the end of his leadership, but his legacy lived on through the stories of his battles and the tragic vow that defined much of his life. The story of Jephthah's vow and its tragic consequences serves as a sobering reminder of the seriousness of making vows to God and the potential for unintended and devastating outcomes. Jephthah's leadership, marked by both triumph and tragedy, left a lasting impact on Israelite history, serving as a cautionary tale for future generations. Despite his military success, Jephthah's legacy is overshadowed by the sorrow and regret of his vow, a reminder of the complexity of human actions and the profound consequences they can have.